In this video I'm painting a chaplain. As the main colour is the same as the undercoat, I sprayed the black undercoat twice. Next, to get the light reflection right, what you need to do is hold the miniature next to a lamp, and then you can see where the light is bouncing off your miniature. Once you have the light looking how you want it, you can start painting the highlights. For the black, I started off with covers black first, going over the undercoat. Next I used Scavenge Light Dinge, so it's just slightly lighter. Then I used Corax White. In the case of the arms, the colour went all the way through the arm, where with the legs only went part way up, to try and represent how the light is bouncing off the miniature. And lastly, white scar was used for the black areas. For the shoulder pads, cracked blue was used initially and also on the left knee. Then for the highlighting it of these parts, I used Venetian grey initially instead of using a blue, and after that white scar was used just to pick the very upmost areas out. All the silver areas, including the internal armour, the weapon, and also the chains on the miniature, were initially painted with lead belcher, and once that was dry, null oil was applied to the area to give a bit of depth. For the skull on the backpack, the skull of the face, and also the pages of the book, initially Upshapti bone was applied. Then Screaming Skull was applied to the two skulls, but not the pages of the book. And once they were dry, Agrax Earthshade was applied to these three locations. And once the Agrax Earthshade had dried, Pallid Leech Flesh was used, but this time it was only for the skull of the face, just to pick out a little bit of extra detail on the skull. The opposite side of the face was painted with Keslev Flesh, and then Weakland Flesh Shade was applied afterwards. For the gold areas on the miniature, Balthazar Gold was used first because it's going over black. Then Jehanna's Gold was applied afterwards over the entirety of the gold areas. For the symbol on the shoulder pad and also the two Ultramarine symbols, first Corax White was used, and then the white scar was used just to go around the edges. This helps to make these parts of the miniature pop a little bit. Corax White was also used on the power cable initially, followed by Flaskets Yellow, and then stripes were painted on after that with Chaos Black to make the power cable stand out. For the Imperial Laurel on the backpack, Caliban Green was used first, and then I used the side of the bush to apply Warboss Green just to pick out the edges. For the hand grip of the weapon, 2 coats of corn red were applied first because it's going over black. Next I used blood red to pick out the edges of the wrapping, but you don't have to worry about trying to paint up both sides of the edge. You can just paint the blood red straight down the centre, because the next coat will separate the two edges. And the next coat is Caraberg Crimson, which covers the entire area, and like I said, this will sink into the edges where you need it to. The wax part of the Purity Seals initially was painted with corn red, and afterwards blood red was applied with the side of the bush just to pick out the very edge and the top facing for the wax. And the parchment part of the Purity Seal was initially painted with Keslev Flesh. Afterwards, Weakland Flesh Wash was applied to the area. Once this was dried, I thinned down some Abaddon black paint with some water, and then used this to sparingly put some writing onto the parchment parts of the Purity Seals. To paint the book and also the nid, which is on the bottom of the miniature, initially I used the Upshapti bone because of it being black. Once a couple of coats of the Upshapti bone were applied, I then applied a couple of coats of blood red, and then a quick dry brush of squid orange was applied into the red areas. And after this has had time to dry, I've used a bale red wash over the area to give a bit of depth to the colour. For the chitinous armour of the NID and also the spine of the book, Cantor blue was used first. Afterwards, ultramarine blue was used just to pick out the edges, and that finishes off the book and the NID. And we're getting close to the end now. For the eye and also the scope on the weapon, I initially painted them with white scar, afterwards applying some bloodletter glaze, and once it dries, the bloodletter glaze should want to sink into the outside area, leaving the inside white, giving it this look of brightness. And a small amount of nor oil was applied to the eye on the skull side, just to make the eye even darker than it was before. If you like the video, remember to subscribe to help the channel, and also send links to your friends.